The palace of the Dragon Queen stood high above the red clouds, shining like molten gold under twin suns. Inside its grand hall, the air trembled with power and pride. The walls were carved from crystal fire, and each column was shaped like a roaring dragon. Every noble, every warrior, every ruler from the nearby worlds had come. Today was not an ordinary day. It was the day the Dragon Queen would let her daughter choose a father. The queen sat upon her throne of flame, tall and proud, her golden wings folded behind her. Her eyes burned like two suns. In front of her stood the young princess, small, curious, and full of wonder. She had the same bright eyes, but softer, kinder. The queen's voice echoed through the hall, deep and powerful. "My daughter," she said, "you must choose a father worthy of your blood, a warrior strong enough to guard the dragon throne, a heart brave enough to match ours." The hall erupted with cheers. Proud warriors beat their chests. Alien nobles whispered, already certain that one of them would be chosen. The queen had invited the greatest beings across the stars, commanders, generals, kings, and even alien lords with skin made of metal or stone. Among all these great ones, one man stood awkwardly near the back, a human mechanic named Ethan Cole. He had come only to fix the royal transport ship that broke down near the palace gates. He was dressed in worn clothes with grease on his hands and tired eyes. He had no idea that he was standing in the most powerful court in the galaxy. The guards had allowed him inside only because the palace's airship needed repairs urgently. Ethan didn't care for crowns or titles. He just wanted to finish his work and earn enough money to buy medicine for his little daughter back home on Earth Colony 7. While everyone's attention was on the queen, the princess turned her head. Her golden eyes stopped at Ethan. She tilted her head curiously. Among all the shining armor and glowing wings, this human looked small, tired, but honest. His face carried warmth, something the court rarely showed. The queen noticed her daughter staring and smiled softly. "My child, you may look upon all who stand here," she said, "and when your heart speaks, you shall point to the one who feels right." The princess nodded. She slowly walked among the rows of proud warriors. Each one bowed before her, showing off strength, power, and riches. Yet she passed them all. Whispers spread through the hall. "What is she doing?" one noble hissed. "Why does she not choose the Fire Lord or the Iron General?" But the princess kept walking. Her eyes searched for something else, and then she stopped. She stood before Ethan, the human mechanic still holding a broken wrench in his hand. The hall went silent. Even the flames seemed to freeze. Ethan blinked, confused. Hello?" he said quietly. The princess smiled, small and shy. "You," she said, pointing at him. "I choose you." A wave of shock spread across the room. The nobles gasped. The warriors shouted in disbelief. The queen's eyes widened and her golden aura flared. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice trembling with power. The princess turned to her mother and repeated, louder this time, "I choose him. The human." Ethan stepped back, shaking his head. "Wait, what?" "I think there's been a mistake." But before he could finish, the entire hall erupted. Some laughed. Some yelled. "A human? A mechanic?" One noble spat. "He is nothing. He doesn't even have wings." The queen rose from her throne. The flames around her crown burned brighter. "Silence," she commanded. Her eyes locked on Ethan. "You human, what do you say to this?" Ethan's heart pounded. He looked at the little princess beside him. Her eyes were pure, filled with trust. He swallowed hard. I didn't do anything, Your Majesty. I was just fixing your ship." The queen's gaze softened for a brief second. Something about his calm voice and the way he didn't bow in fear made her hesitate. But pride returned quickly. "You dare stand before dragons as if you belong here?" she said coldly. Ethan sighed. "I don't belong here, Your Majesty, but your ship wouldn't fly without me." That one simple line made the entire hall fall silent again. Even the queen blinked in surprise. The princess smiled brightly. "See, Mother, he is honest. He doesn't lie. I like him." The queen's expression turned unreadable. Deep inside, she felt something strange. A faint respect for the courage of a simple man who dared to speak truth in a room full of power. But her pride wouldn't allow her to show it. "Very well," she said at last, her voice cold but steady. "If my daughter truly chooses this human, then let the gods of fire test him. Tomorrow he shall face a challenge worthy of dragons. If he survives, we will speak again. Ethan exhaled slowly, not knowing what he had just agreed to. The hall's flames flared once more as the queen turned away. The princess's small hand reached out and touched his, warm, innocent, full of hope. And somewhere in that moment, Ethan realized his life was about to change forever. The night after the queen's challenge was silent, but Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat inside a small worker's tent behind the grand palace, his hands still covered in machine oil. The air was heavy with strange alien scents, metal, smoke, and the faint hiss of dragonfire. He stared at the stars through the torn tent roof, thinking about his daughter Lily waiting for him back home on Earth Colony 7. He never wanted fame or power. He only wanted a safe life for her. But now somehow he had been chosen by a dragon princess and challenged by a queen who could destroy him with a single breath. In the royal palace above, the queen couldn't rest either. She stood near the balcony looking down at the sleeping city of fire below. The stars reflected off her golden armor. Her mind was full of disbelief. How could my daughter choose that human? She whispered to herself. What does she see in him? The princess, small and gentle, sat nearby hugging a toy dragon. Because he's kind, mother, she said softly. He didn't bow or beg. He just smiled. The queen turned to her, her voice sharp but curious. Kindness does not make a father, my child. Strength does. The princess looked down. But maybe strength can come from kindness too. The queen said nothing. But her eyes, for the first time in years, softened. Down below, before dawn, Ethan was already at work. He fixed broken energy converters and old engines that palace workers had given up on. His tools were simple and his hands were rough, but he worked with quiet focus. The other alien workers watched him with confusion. Why is this human still here? One muttered. Does he really think he can survive the queen's trial? Ethan didn't respond. He just kept tightening bolts and humming an old Earth song. Soon small footsteps echoed behind him. He turned to see the dragon princess standing there, wearing a cloak to hide her wings. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dark. You should not be here, little one, Ethan said gently. Your mother might get angry. The princess giggled. She already is. But I wanted to see you, Ethan smiled. Well, you picked quite the wrong man to impress a queen. She tilted her head. Are you afraid of her? He paused, then nodded slightly. Anyone with a brain would be. The princess stepped closer. Then why didn't you run away? Ethan looked at his greasy hands. Because I've run enough in my life. I promised my daughter I'd never run from the truth again. The princess blinked, confused. You have a daughter? Yes, he said softly. She's small like you, loves drawing dragons. I miss her every day. For a moment, silence filled the workshop. The princess looked at the broken airship engine beside him, and then at his tired face. She finally understood why she liked him. He reminded her of the stories her mother told, about heroes who were strong not because of power, but because of heart. That morning, palace guards arrived. The queen demands your presence, one barked. Ethan wiped his hands and followed them. The princess tried to come too, but the guard stopped her. The great hall was filled again. The nobles whispered and sneered as Ethan walked in, his simple clothes stained with oil. The queen watched from her throne. You have accepted my challenge, human, she said, her voice echoing like thunder. Tomorrow you will enter the chamber of fire, where even dragons fear to go. Inside lies the ancient core of our world. Fix it and you live. Fail and you die. Ethan took a slow breath. I don't have a choice, do I? The queen's lips curved slightly. None, he nodded. Then I'll do what I can. The court erupted in laughter. He'll melt before he even touches the core, someone shouted. Humans are weak. But Ethan didn't reply. He bowed slightly, not in fear, but in respect, and left the hall quietly. Later that night, as he prepared his tools, he heard a soft voice behind him. Ethan, he turned. It was the dragon princess again, her cloak wrapped tightly. She held out a small glowing stone. This is from the royal nest, she said. It keeps the fire calm. Maybe it will help you. He looked at her in surprise. Thank you, princess. You shouldn't risk this, she smiled. You saved my toy when the engine sparked yesterday. I just want to help you too. Ethan chuckled. Seems like you're braver than most people I've met. The princess beamed. My mother says courage runs in our blood. Maybe you have it too. Ethan looked at her kindly. Maybe I do. Maybe that's why your mother's test doesn't scare me anymore. The next morning would decide everything. His fate, her faith, and the queen's pride. But for the first time, the mechanic didn't feel small or unworthy. He looked at the rising suns over the dragon palace and whispered to himself, "All right, Queen of Fire. Let's see what your test really is." The twin suns rose over the crimson mountains, painting the palace in golden light. The entire dragon court gathered once again, waiting for the queen's command. Today was the day of the trial, and every noble, warrior, and guest wanted to see the human fail. The Chamber of Fire was an ancient place buried deep under the palace. It glowed with molten veins and swirling energy, the heart of the dragon world. The task was clear: fix the broken dragon core, an ancient relic that powered their realm for thousands of years. Many had tried before. None returned. Ethan Cole, the human mechanic, stood at the massive gate of the chamber. His shirt was torn, his hands bandaged, and his mind filled with thoughts of his daughter back home. The dragon princess stood on the balcony above, her small hands gripping the railing. Her eyes followed him as he stepped forward. "Begin," the queen's voice echoed through the chamber. The gate opened with a rumble. Heat burst out like a living creature. Ethan squinted against the brightness and walked inside. Flames danced along the walls like living spirits. The air shimmered, heavy and dangerous. Inside, he saw the dragon core, a massive sphere of energy, cracked and leaking molten fire. It pulsed weakly like a dying heart. Sparks flew with every beat. Ethan approached slowly, pulling his old human-made tools from his belt. Around him, dragon symbols glowed on the walls, warning intruders to stay away. He muttered softly, "All right, old girl. Let's see what's wrong with you." Up above, the queen watched through a crystal screen. The court murmured among themselves. "He won't last a minute," one alien sneered. A human cannot touch sacred fire, but the queen said nothing. She was watching closely, not the flames, but the man's calmness. He didn't panic. He didn't shout. He simply worked, careful and steady, as if he were fixing a child's toy instead of a weapon of God's. Minutes turned into hours. Sweat rolled down his face, his shirt soaked through. He used melted dragonstone to seal cracks, adjusted energy conduits, and used his own wrench as a stabilizer when the machine threatened to overload. Every sound echoed like thunder, every spark a warning. Suddenly, the chamber shook. The core screamed like a living beast. The ground split open. Fire burst from the cracks and Ethan fell back, his arm burned. The crowd gasped. Even the queen leaned forward. "Stop," one noble shouted. "He'll die." But the princess's voice rang out softly. "He won't." Inside, Ethan groaned, trying to get back on his feet. His vision blurred. For a moment, he thought about giving up. Then he remembered Lily's face, her laugh, her drawings, her voice saying, "Don't give up, Daddy." He clenched his teeth and crawled forward. "Not yet," he whispered. "I've come too far." The core flared again, brighter this time. His tools melted. The metal floor burned beneath his boots. Thinking fast, Ethan pulled out the glowing stone the princess had given him. It shimmered softly, calming the energy around him. He pressed it against the core's main seal, and for a second the fire paused, as if listening. "Come on," he said quietly. "Just hold together, please." With trembling hands, he rerouted the final circuit, using pieces of his broken wrench to bridge the gap. The moment he twisted it tight, the core pulsed once, then again, then shone with blinding light. The explosion never came. Instead, the entire chamber filled with a soft, steady glow. The dragon core was alive again. Up above, the court fell silent. The queen stood slowly, her eyes wide. "Impossible," she whispered. The flames in the palace dimmed to a peaceful orange. The ancient symbols glowed with new life. Every dragon in the kingdom felt it. The heartbeat of their world had returned. The gate opened slowly, and Ethan walked out, covered in soot and ash. His clothes were burned, his arm wrapped in bandages, but he was smiling weakly. "I think it's fixed," he said simply. The crowd was speechless. Some bowed their heads. Others looked away in shame. The queen looked down at him with unreadable eyes. The princess broke the silence. She ran from the balcony, her golden dress fluttering behind her, and before anyone could stop her, she threw her arms around Ethan. "You did it!" she cried. "You're alive." Ethan laughed softly, though his body trembled from exhaustion. "Barely," he whispered. "But I made a promise to never give up." The queen stepped down from her throne, her voice quiet but strong. "No human has ever touched the dragon core and lived. You have done what even my finest could not. Ethan bowed his head. It wasn't power, Your Majesty. It was just care. The Queen studied him for a long time, and in that moment something changed in her eyes. Respect, maybe even admiration. She turned to the court. Let it be known, she declared, that this human has passed the trial of fire. He is not weak. The nobles lowered their heads, silenced. The princess smiled proudly, still holding Ethan's hand, and though he didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning, the spark that would soon set the galaxy ablaze with a story no one would ever forget. The great hall of the Dragon Palace was filled again, but this time the air was heavy and tense. The nobles stood in silence. The fire lanterns burned dim, reflecting the mood of their queen. The ancient dragon core had been repaired by a human mechanic. The impossible had happened. Yet instead of celebration, whispers filled the corners of the room. How can a human touch the sacred flame? One elder hissed. He must have tricked the gods, said another. No outsider should ever be honored here, growled a general, his armor clanking with every breath. The queen sat on her throne, still and silent. Her golden wings were half open, her eyes fixed on the human who stood below, Ethan Cole. His clothes were burned, his arm bandaged, but his eyes were calm. The little dragon princess sat near the steps, clutching her mother's hand tightly. The queen finally spoke, her voice echoing like thunder. You survived the Chamber of Fire. You restored the dragon core. No creature has done this in centuries. Ethan lowered his head respectfully. I only fixed what was broken, Your Majesty. Her eyes narrowed. And how did a human know how to repair an artifact older than your species? He shrugged slightly. Machines speak the same language no matter how old. You just have to listen, the hall murmured again. His answer was calm, but his tone, humble yet confident, made even the proudest nobles uneasy. The queen could feel the growing unrest. To them, this human survival was not a miracle. It was a threat. The eldest warlord stepped forward. My queen, he growled. This creature disrespects our ways. He must not be rewarded. The princess's choice dishonors our bloodline. The queen's golden eyes glowed brighter. Enough. But her court would not stop. He is dangerous, shouted another. He could be using forbidden human tricks. The queen stood from her throne, her aura bursting like a storm. Flames danced around her feet, and even the strongest generals bowed in fear. You forget who commands here, she roared. If the gods wanted him dead, the fire would have consumed him. Silence fell instantly. The only sound was the crackle of flames. Ethan looked up slowly. I don't want to cause trouble, Your Majesty. I only came here to work and earn my way home. The queen's voice softened, though her pride still hid her emotion. Then why didn't you run, human? Most of your kind would have begged for their lives. Ethan smiled faintly. Because I have someone waiting for me. A little girl who believes her father can fix anything. The princess looked up, her eyes wide. The queen's gaze flickered toward her daughter, then back to the human. Her voice was sharp again. You risked your life for the sake of a child who is not even here? He nodded. A father's love doesn't need to be close to be real. The queen turned away quickly, hiding something in her expression, a flicker of pain. For the first time in years, someone had spoken words that pierced her armor. Long ago, she had lost her mate in the Great War. The memory still haunted her. The day fire fell from the sky and her love was gone forever. Since then she had ruled alone, her heart turned to stone. But now a human's quiet courage was cracking that wall. Still, she could not show weakness before her court. You will not leave yet, she said coldly. You will stay under palace watch until I decide your fate. Ethan bowed slightly. As you wish. As the guards escorted him out, the princess ran forward. Mother, please. He did nothing wrong. The queen knelt down, her expression softening for her child. I know, little one. But the world is not kind. Not everyone sees what you see. The princess looked down sadly. But he fixed what even dragons couldn't. The queen's hand hesitated on her daughter's shoulder. Sometimes truth makes people angry, my child. They fear what reminds them of their weakness. The girl frowned. Then they're wrong to fear him. The queen smiled faintly. Maybe they are. That night the queen stood alone on her balcony. The wind carried the scent of molten rock and distant storms. She looked toward the human's small tent below the palace tower. He was sitting by the fire, repairing his tools again, calm, patient, ordinary. Yet something about him was not ordinary at all. She whispered to herself, "Why did my daughter choose him? What do you carry in that fragile heart, human?" A knock came at her chamber door. One of her generals entered and bowed low. "My queen, should we prepare to remove the human quietly?" Her eyes flashed. "Touch him and you will answer to me." The general froze, fear crawling down his spine. Yes, my queen." He backed away quickly. When he was gone, the queen sighed, her voice almost a whisper. "No, not yet. There is something I must understand." Below, the princess looked out her own window. Clutching the glowing stone, Ethan had returned to her. "He's not like the others," she whispered. "He fixes what's broken. Even hearts." The palace slept, but the fire of destiny had only begun to burn. The queen's fury was not only anger, it was the beginning of something she couldn't explain. Something that would change her daughter, and the fate of both their worlds forever. The night sky above the dragon palace was restless. Thunder rumbled softly through the clouds and streaks of lightning danced over the molten peaks. Inside the palace walls, whispers spread like wildfire. The queen protects him now. Has she lost her mind? A human favored by dragons? Unthinkable. But while the nobles plotted in dark corners, Ethan Cole slept on the cold floor of his small quarters, unaware of the danger brewing around him. His dreams were not peaceful. They were filled with faces from his past. His daughter Lily, running through the metal streets of Earth Colony 7 laughing under the artificial sun. Then the memory twisted, her laughter fading into a cry. The image of fire and wreckage haunted him again. He woke suddenly, sweat rolling down his face. He rubbed his tired eyes and whispered, "I'll keep my promise, Lily. I'll come home." Before dawn, heavy footsteps approached. The queen's personal guard entered. "The queen commands your presence," the leader said coldly. Ethan followed without question. The halls were empty, the air filled with faint echoes of distant roars. The queen stood in her private chamber, her expression unreadable. The dragon princess sat nearby, her golden eyes full of worry. "You wanted to see me?" Ethan asked carefully. "Yes," the queen said. "There are whispers in the court. Some demand your death. Others call you a liar, but I believe you deserve to prove who you truly are." Ethan frowned. "Haven't I done that already?" The queen's wings shifted slightly. "You fixed the dragon core, yes, but my people don't trust you yet. If they are to see you as more than an intruder, you must face one more test," the princess gasped. "Mother, no! He already passed!" The queen raised her hand gently. "This is not punishment, child. This is truth." She turned to Ethan. "In the valley below lies a dragon from the old wars, once a guardian, now twisted by dark energy. It destroys villages, burns forests, kills without reason. None of my soldiers can approach it without dying." She paused, her eyes steady. "If you can stop it, not by strength but by your own way, you will have my respect." Ethan blinked. "You want me to stop a dragon?" The queen's lips curved slightly. "Do you fear the challenge?" He gave a small, tired smile. "I'd be stupid not to. But I'll try." At sunrise, the valley burned with red mist. The old dragon, a massive beast with silver scars and cracked wings, roared from its cave. Its breath melted the rocks below. The air itself seemed alive with rage. Ethan stood alone on the cliff edge, carrying nothing but his toolkit and a small pulse stabilizer from the palace's repair bay. He stared down at the creature, feeling its heat from afar. "All right, big guy," he muttered. "Let's see if you're angry, or just in pain." He climbed down carefully, every step dangerous. The ground quaked under the dragon's growl. When he reached the base of the valley, the beast turned its golden eyes toward him. One breath could have turned him to ash. Ethan raised his hand slowly. "Easy there," he said softly. "I'm not here to fight." The dragon's growl deepened. Flames danced from its mouth, but something stopped it from attacking. The small pulse stabilizer in Ethan's hand hummed softly. The beast's breathing changed. He could hear it, erratic, broken, like a machine overheating. "Your core," Ethan whispered, realization dawning. "You're not wild. You're hurt." Ignoring the danger, he moved closer. The dragon snapped its tail, grazing his shoulder, but he didn't back away. "I know that sound," he murmured, listening to the rhythm of its energy. Same pattern as the palace conduits. You're leaking fire from your inner chamber. He crouched near the creature's neck, his fingers trembling as he connected the stabilizer to a glowing scar. The machine hissed, then sparked violently. The explosion threw him backward, but the pulse wave stabilized the dragon's core. The creature let out one final roar, not of pain but of relief. The fire in its chest dimmed, turning blue. The dragon lowered its head, breathing calmly for the first time in years. Ethan coughed, sitting up. Told you. Just needed a little tune-up. From the sky, the queen and her daughter watched from a crystal screen. The princess cheered, clapping her hands. He did it again! But the queen said nothing. She watched the human standing beside a resting dragon, his face covered in dust and blood, his eyes calm and gentle. He tamed a war beast without magic, she whispered, just understanding. Later, when Ethan returned to the palace, the gates opened wide for him. The same nobles who once mocked him now stared in silence. The queen stood waiting at the top of the stairs. You faced death and saved what even dragons could not, she said softly. You do not seek glory, yet you earn it. Tell me, human, what drives you? Ethan looked up at her. A promise to someone who believes in me. The queen's eyes softened. For the first time, her voice carried warmth. Then I understand my daughter's choice. The princess ran forward and hugged him tightly. The crowd gasped, but this time no one dared to protest. The queen turned to her people. Let it be known, she declared, her voice proud, that courage is not born from wings or fire, but from heart. And today a human has shown us both. The palace roared with approval, but deep within the queen's heart something stirred, a feeling she had not known in years. Respect. And something far deeper. The dragon palace was calm for the first time in many years. The skies were clear. The flames that once roared restlessly now danced softly along the towers. Word had spread across the empire. The human had tamed a war dragon. For the nobles, it was still a wound to their pride. But for the people, it was a miracle. Farmers, workers, and even dragon hatchlings whispered the story with awe. A human fixed the dragon's heart, they said. He spoke with fire and made it listen. The queen heard every rumor. Yet instead of anger this time, she listened in silence. That night she stood in her private garden beneath the twin moons, surrounded by silver flames that bloomed like flowers. Her daughter, the young princess, sat beside the small pond, humming softly while playing with the glowing stone Ethan had once repaired for her. The queen looked at her and asked softly, "Why do you trust him so easily, my child?" The princess smiled. "Because he doesn't treat us like we're above him. He talks to us like people." The queen's eyes softened. "And that makes him special?" The little one nodded. "He's not afraid to be kind, even when everyone laughs." For a moment, the queen said nothing. Her mind returned to the memory of Ethan standing before the dragon core, sweat and ash covering his face, yet his eyes steady and brave. No fear, no arrogance, just quiet determination. She whispered to herself, "Humans. Such fragile creatures, yet they keep surviving everything." The next morning, Ethan was summoned again. Not to the throne room this time, but to the Hall of Memories, where the walls shimmered with ancient flames recording the past of dragonkind. He entered quietly, bowing slightly. "You wanted to see me, Your Majesty?" The queen stood near the central flame, her golden armor reflecting its light. "Yes, I wanted to understand something." Ethan frowned. "Understand what?" She turned to him, her expression unreadable. "Why you risk yourself for others. You could have died fixing the core. You could have been burned alive by that dragon in the valley. You gained nothing, yet you still helped." Ethan hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Where I come from, fixing things isn't just about metal or fire. Sometimes it's about people. If something's broken, you try to fix it, even if no one thanks you." The queen tilted her head slightly. "Even if it cost your life?" He nodded. "A life without meaning isn't worth much anyway. My daughter once told me, heroes don't always fight. They fix what others break. I guess I just try to live up to that." The queen looked away quickly, hiding the emotion that flickered in her eyes. "Your daughter must be wise. She's the reason I'm still breathing," he said softly. The queen felt something warm stir in her chest, something she hadn't felt since the death of her mate. Empathy. Later that day, a tremor shook the palace. The sky darkened and horns echoed through the city. The queen rushed to the balcony and her eyes widened. From the horizon, Black shapes rose into the sky, warships of the rival Carthan Empire, ancient enemies of dragonkind. "Prepare the defenses," she commanded. The palace burst into motion. The nobles panicked, the guards armed themselves, but Ethan ran to the queen's side. "What's happening?" "Carthan forces," she said, her wings flaring. "They've come to destroy us." He glanced at the smoke trails of the incoming ships. "Then let me help." The queen frowned. "This is not your fight, human." Ethan shook his head. "It wasn't my fight last time either. But I made it mine." Before she could reply, the first explosions rocked the sky. Plasma fire streaked through the air. The queen took flight, her wings glowing like sunlight. She led her army into the air, her roars shaking the heavens. Ethan stayed on the ground, racing toward the damaged defense towers. He tore open control panels, reconnected power conduits, and reprogrammed the energy shields using his simple tools. Sparks burned his fingers, but he worked faster than anyone else. The princess watched from her chamber window, clutching the glowing stone. "Please don't die, Ethan," she whispered. Hours passed. The war above was fierce. The queen struck down enemy ships one by one, her flames cutting through the sky. But then she saw a massive war cruiser descending directly toward the palace. It targeted the very heart of her city. "Ethan!" she shouted from above. He saw it too. Without thinking, he sprinted to the tower's generator and overloaded its circuit. The explosion of light shot a powerful energy beam into the sky, hitting the cruiser's underbelly. The ship burst apart in flames, crashing into the mountains beyond, but the shockwave threw Ethan across the platform. He fell hard, blood dripping from his temple. The queen landed beside him moments later, her armor cracked, her wings trembling. She knelt and touched his shoulder. "You fool," she whispered. "You could have died." He smiled weakly. "You're welcome." The queen stared at him for a long moment. Why do you keep saving us?" Ethan looked up at her, his voice quiet. "Because someone has to remind you that even gods need fixing sometimes." For the first time, the mighty dragon queen laughed softly, a sound no one had heard in centuries. She looked at him, not as a subject, but as an equal. "Perhaps my daughter saw more clearly than I did." He chuckled. "Kids usually do." The queen stood, offering her hand to help him up. "Then rise, human. You have earned more than our respect. You have earned our trust." As the sun set behind them, painting the palace in orange and gold, the queen finally understood the truth. Power could command armies. Fear could control kingdoms. But humanity, that quiet, unshakable heart, could heal even dragons. The war was over. Smoke rose gently from the mountains, and the twin suns shone once again over the dragon palace. The people, human, dragon, and alien alike, stood in stunned silence, staring at the sky where the queen's flames had ended the invasion. The once mighty Carthan fleet now drifted as ashes among the clouds. But the price had been heavy. The palace walls were cracked, the towers scorched, and the great queen herself stood tired, her armor blackened with soot. Beside her, the human who had risked his life once again, Ethan Cole, leaned weakly against a pillar, his hand still shaking from the explosion that saved the city. The courtyard filled slowly with nobles, soldiers, and servants. They whispered as they saw the queen standing beside the wounded mechanic. For centuries, pride had ruled their hearts. Now, they bowed their heads, not from fear, but from respect. The queen raised her voice, strong but weary. "My people, today we stand not because of wings or fire. We stand because of courage, because a human with no power reminded us what true strength is." Her words echoed through the marble hall. The nobles looked down in silence. Some wept quietly, others touched their hearts in salute. The queen turned toward Ethan. "You fixed our core, you tamed a beast, and today you saved our home. Tell me, human, how does one repay such a debt?" Ethan smiled faintly, brushing dust from his sleeve. "You don't owe me anything, Your Majesty. I just did what I knew was right." The queen's gaze softened. Then perhaps it is I who owes you understanding. The princess came running from behind the guards, her small feet echoing across the floor. Without hesitation, she hugged Ethan tightly, her voice trembling. I knew you'd come back. I told everyone you would. Ethan smiled, kneeling to meet her eyes. You were right again, little one. Guess I can't make promises to you and break them, huh? The princess giggled and wiped her tears. You fixed everything, just like you said. The queen watched them quietly. A mother's heart that had long been silent now beat again with warmth she thought was lost forever. For the first time, she didn't see Ethan as an outsider. She saw him as something her world had needed, a reminder that kindness and courage could exist even without fire or wings. Later that evening, the palace gathered for the ceremony of renewal, a sacred event dragons performed after great battles. The queen stood before her people beneath the glowing pillars of flame, her daughter by her side, and Ethan standing humbly a few steps behind. The queen's voice carried across the city. For ages, we dragons believed that power was all that defined worth. We forgot that the heart too can be powerful. This human reminded us that compassion does not weaken, it strengthens. She turned to Ethan. Kneel, Ethan Cole. He hesitated, then knelt slowly. The queen placed her clawed hand gently over his shoulder. From this day forward, you are no longer a stranger in our world. You are the guardian of the dragon line, protector of my daughter, and symbol of unity between our races. The crowd gasped. The title was ancient, reserved for the most trusted of the queen's kind. No alien, let alone a human, had ever been honored with it. Ethan blinked in disbelief. Your Majesty, I'm not worthy of that. The queen smiled faintly. You have already proven otherwise. The princess clapped her hands in joy. Does that mean you'll stay with us? He looked at her, then at the queen. Maybe for a while. My daughter's far away, but maybe she'd want to meet her dragon sister one day. The queen's lips curved into a small, warm smile. Then when that day comes, our doors will be open. Days passed. The scars of war healed, and life returned to the empire. Dragons and humans began to trade, share knowledge, and learn from one another. Ethan worked in the palace workshops, teaching dragon engineers how to craft with precision instead of pride. The princess followed him everywhere, asking endless questions about stars, engines, and humanity. Sometimes the queen would watch them from afar, her heart filled with quiet peace. One night, as the sun set and the stars spread like diamonds, across the dark sky, the queen joined Ethan on the balcony overlooking the rebuilt city. You've changed more than machines, Ethan Cole, she said softly. You've changed hearts. He looked out at the glowing skyline. Maybe we both did. The queen turned her gaze toward the stars. Perhaps this is what our worlds needed, a reminder that power means nothing without compassion. Ethan smiled, his eyes reflecting the twin moons. And compassion means nothing without courage. The queen nodded slowly. Then together, we will guard both. Below them, the city glowed brighter, united in peace for the first time in centuries. The people sang songs not of dragons or humans, but of both, together. The princess ran out onto the balcony laughing. Mother, Ethan, look, the sky's full of light. Above them, thousands of tiny drones Ethan had repaired earlier lit the sky in shapes of dragons and humans standing side by side, a symbol of a new dawn. The queen placed her hand over her heart and whispered, "A new alliance, born from a human's heart." Ethan looked up at the stars and smiled. Maybe this time, the galaxy will remember us for what we fixed, not for what we broke. And as the stars burned brighter, the legend of the human mechanic and the dragon queen spread across the galaxies. A story of fire, love, and the unbreakable power of humanity.